Good morning, good morning. Happy Monday. Grab yourselves a cup of coffee. I will be right with you. All right, drop me a note in the comments. Let me know you are here. Good morning, good morning. I forgot a little backlight. How the heck are ya? What is going on this morning? Welcome to Men Up with Mike, Monday before Christmas edition. Good morning, Sarah. How are you, my friend? All right, what do you think? Different backdrop? Black? A little ominous? I don't know. Welcome to Men Up with Mike. My name is Mike Cameron, and I will be your host. This is the show where we talk all things leadership, personal development, and all through the lens of what it means to be a dude. But today, my friends, I want to talk a little bit about the second pandemic. And I see that you gave it an angry face today. Hey, good morning, Michelle. You're on my personal Facebook page, so I got to look over here to see you over there. If you can hop on my other page, then I can actually see the comments through the software here. So happy Monday. What is going on? Are you guys ready for Christmas? Are you taking some time off? Let me know what it is you are doing. Let me know what it is you are up to. Where are you watching? Are you on LinkedIn? Are you over at mikecameron.ca? I hope you're over at mikecameron.ca. I would really love to have you over there. We are adding content all the time, building that community. Some of the content is member only. Membership is completely free. Would love to have you over there. Michelle says she likes the black and fine. She gives me a fine. Michelle is off skiing today on a little bit of a holiday with her family. So that is a pretty cool thing. So today, as I wait for people to get sort of settled in, I want to talk a little bit about this, what I would call the second pandemic. And for me, what I see coming is this mental health crisis, this mental health pandemic that we're already seeing. I think this probably existed before COVID to some extent. We just didn't talk about it nearly as much. So the one positive for me coming out of COVID is that we are now actually having these conversations around this mental health crisis. I forgot to turn the music down again. So today I want to talk a little bit about that on this Monday morning and talk about what can we do and why should we care and what does it mean for all of us, and especially for those of us in leadership positions, business owners, business leaders, entrepreneurs. What does it mean for those in positions of power, and what can we do? Hey, Anne is over on the website. Michelle is over on the website. All right. Thank you, ladies. I appreciate that. So let's talk a little bit. Hey, Jared, it's already here, but you know what? We've talked about a second wave with COVID. Let's talk about the second wave from a mental health perspective, because it is coming without a doubt. You know, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and we were talking about exactly this. So I want to share with you, before I get to that story, I want to share with you some statistics. 500,000 Canadians every week will miss work due to mental health issues. 500,000 Canadians every week will miss work for some type of mental health issue. Mental health is a leading cause of disability in the workplace. 30% of all disability claims are mental health related. 70% of all mental health costs are mental health related. In the United States, 20% of employees report that they have voluntarily left a role for mental health issues. If we narrow that down to millennials, that number jumps to 50%. If we narrow that down to Gen Z, that number jumps to 75% of employees have said they have voluntarily left a role for mental health reasons. Yeah, Jared, absolutely. From a mental health perspective, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So they also say by the age of 40, over half of Canadians will have or have had some type of mental illness. These statistics are ones that were published in January of 2020. So these were published pre-pandemic. So what do you think is going to happen to these stats post-COVID? They're going to go through the roof without question. They're already going through the roof without question. I was having this conversation the other day with somebody, and we were talking about exactly this effect, the after effect. And we talked about in the context of, she was sharing with me a story of when her mother passed away. And they knew it was coming. She was sick for a while. And when mom passed away, she went into crisis mode. She had her list of things she had to do. She had to get the final arrangements prepared. She had to notify everybody. She had to get busy. And so that busyness took her mind off of the grief. The busyness took her focus away from what was actually happening and gave her something to put her attention to. And then, of course, what happens is when mom is all done and buried and all of those pieces are complete and you get to sit down afterwards, that's when the grief kicks in. That's when it all starts to come back up. And Michelle and I were talking about this the other day as well. Michelle was an ICU nurse for the better part of a decade. And she talked about exactly that same effect. That as an ICU nurse, yes, it's stressful, but you're so busy, you're so in the moment, you're so well trained that you just deliver. And then what happens is when you stop delivering and there's that letdown, that's when the trauma kicks in. That's when the grief kicks in. That's when it starts to manifest itself. And that's what I'm concerned about when we talk about this second pandemic. Jared says, but it's still ignored. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Although I think we're starting to talk about it a little bit more. So one of the things so I guess the question is, how do we deal with this? How do we deal with this as individuals? How do we deal with this as corporations? How do we deal with this as business leaders? Anne says she's angry because the second pandemic should never be happening. Totally agreed. But it was here in the first place. And the reality is we're never going to get rid of mental illness completely. So the question becomes, how do we deal with it? How do we deal with it on a one-on-one basis? How do we deal with it from a leadership basis? And that's where my effort is focused. That's where my expertise, my learnings over the last 20 years come into play. And my hope is that I can get involved at a corporate level to teach business leaders how to deal with this on a day-to-day basis. You know, it's interesting for me to think back, Colleen was murdered by an ex-boyfriend who subsequently took his own life over 5 years ago. And in the context of mental health, clearly there was something wrong there. And I can't help but think, what might have happened? What might have happened if his employer had better supports in place? What might have happened if somebody at his work had said, hey man, are you okay? How can we help? I don't know. Maybe nothing would have changed. Maybe nothing would have happened. But it certainly makes me wonder, what might have happened? So as individuals, I talk about this all the time, my SOAR framework. Slow down. Practice that pause. Open up to yourself, open up to somebody else. If you're struggling, share. Accept where you're at in the journey. Accept where somebody else is at in their journey. And only then can we reconnect with our emotional selves, reconnect with our real selves, our truest selves, our highest being. And in my mind, that's our best bet as individuals, to practice that emotional fitness. As leaders, how do we create spaces for our team, our individuals, our employees, and our leadership team? Because again, don't forget, leadership needs to take care of their own mental health. So how do we create a space where everybody can do that? How do we create an environment where the resources are there, the resources are accessible? I was talking to an organization recently, and we were talking about their EAP program, their employee assistance program. Their uptake, 3%. 3% uptake for a great program that's available to them for free. 3% uptake. So that's the next question. How do we get people engaged? How do we get people within the organizations to take up some of these programs? Anne says, mental illness has become prevalent over the past 30 years. When I started working, it really wasn't a commonplace topic of discussion. Hey, good morning, Neil. How are you, my friend? And when we talk about mental health, we're often also talking about addictions. And when we talk about getting help, men are less likely to get help. But I feel like that's changing. There's a lot of good men that are starting to speak up. There's a lot of good men out there that are having the conversation, that are sharing their stories. Jared says stigma is there to keep the uptake low. When we talk about that 3% uptake on the EAP programs, the employee assistance programs. Yeah, absolutely. It's scary to pick up that call. I was talking to, I think it was my buddy Al, who's a mental health advocate, and we were talking about that. And he'd said when he was first struggling and he picked up the phone and he called the EAP program, and the voice on the other end of the line said, what's your specific problem that you're dealing with today? And he went, oh shit, and he hung up. And that was as far as he got. It's hard. It's really hard. So the question becomes, how do we make it easier for our people to take these programs and run with them? How do we remove that stigma? How do we create those safe spaces? We bring in people to talk about it. We do those lunch and learns. Jared says leaving a corporate environment 14 months ago has been the best thing for his mental health. Anne says, until people become empathetic to others, it's going to be hard to get businesses to understand there's actually a problem. Yeah, I think, we're getting to a point where there's a lot of businesses that do understand. Like I said, 70% of disability costs are mental health related. Over 500,000 Canadians, as of January of this year, so pre-pandemic, over 500,000 Canadians every week miss work. The economic impact of mental health on the workforce, on the economy, $51 billion. By 2041, the Center for Addictions and Mental Health predicts that cumulatively that will be $2.5 trillion in economic impact. Corporate is starting to understand. Neil says it's changing, Mike, slowly, but we're changing lives one at a time. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just fucking impatient. I want to do it more than one at a time. But it is exciting. You know, I did a talk for PCL Construction, and it's exciting to see organizations the size of PCL getting on board with this stuff, having these conversations. Neil says, I think when professionals talk to people, it's intimidating, but when people have gone through it, when people who have gone through it speak, people seem to let their guards down. Yeah, there's definitely some truth to that. And this is one of the reasons that I think, and people will argue with me, but I think this peer group stuff is a phenomenal start. Doesn't mean we don't have to have the professionals to support. But in my experience, when we get that peer group support, and I can see that Joe and Sally across the table struggle with the same shit that I struggle with, yeah, that's when things start to change. That's when I start to feel that, okay, again, the challenge we have with professionals is there's often this feeling of, I'm broken, they're going to fix me. And that's intimidating, that's shame-inducing, and it's scary. Yet when we create these environments where we can share with each other that are intentional, I'm not just talking about a coffee chat or a beer chat. I'm talking about intentional conversations around how are you feeling today? Really? How are you feeling? Really? And as organizations and business leaders, if we can create that space, for our leadership teams, you know, we often forget about those. We create that space for our leadership teams. We can do that. I'm just going to find the Center for Addictions and Mental Health made 5 recommendations for business leaders. 1, create a long-term organization-wide mental health strategy. 2, institute mandatory mental health training for leadership. 3, develop tailored mental health supports. 4, prioritize return and optimize your return to work process. And 5, track your progress. Track your progress. Hey, Garth, how you doing, man? Good to see you. Neil says, hell yeah. Hell yeah. So I would love to hear from you guys if you've had experience with EAP programs, if you've had experience with corporate mental health programs, what has worked well and what didn't work well for you. I would love to hear from you as I compile more and more case studies, more and more anecdotes. I'm working on an interview series called Leading with Wellness. I interviewed the CEO of First Canadian Title, which is a title insurance company with over 900 employees across the country. And he shared some of their best practices, some of the things they're doing, and they're doing a great job. I'm talking to one of the big banks coming up soon. I've got a few others on my list as well, and hopefully I'll be publishing that interview series by the end of January. That'll be my objective. Garth, yes, I know you agree because you do it, man. You lead in that space, and I appreciate you. All right, my friends. As always, continue to make beautiful shit happen, and happy Monday. Take care.